I'm super hyped to get started with this project, so I was watching lots of VR stuff. And then I discovered this YouTube channel. He does lots of VR content, and he was releasing a tutorial on how to use Steam VR to create a VR game. It looked so easy. How innocent I was. So I'm dividing this game up into 3 separate phases. I wanted to separate it out into VR specific learning, main game, and then final polish. So my thought for this project is to create a carnival game where you have to go and play 3 unique minigames. My ideas for the minigames were not that creative. I thought maybe just a dart game, maybe a basketball game, and then maybe like a pellet rifle game where you have to shoot. So I just found another tutorial by the same person that's newer and shows how to use OpenVR to make VR games. I tried this out for a little bit, but I found that it didn't have a lot of the same ease of use features that the Steam VR one did, at least not immediately easily, and he didn't have full tutorials on it yet. So I just went with Steam VR even though it's antiquated because whatever. So I created a Trello board. So I started simple and I created a ball, and then I added physics to it, and then I made it so that you can throw the ball and it has semi-realistic physics. So the next logical step is to go from throwing a ball to throwing my darts. So then I made it so that you can, when you throw them, they fly and they aim where they're going. So after I made them point, I needed to make them stick. At this point in the game, I am focusing more on the VR specific aspects like the interactability and being able to do all that than I am about scoring points. So like, I haven't made it so that you can score any points. You just throw them at the dartboard or you just throw them in the hoop. It's not really super precise. I did end up creating a button that would spawn more darts and basketballs. So next I played around creating a handgun, and then I also managed to find actually a model for the handgun, so that worked out well. Now that I had something that could fire a bullet, I wanted to create a mounted gun. I don't know exactly how to test this. I want it to be kind of like the mounted water turrets at the theme park. Oh, I know how I'm going to test the mounting system. I created the turret and I found a way to make it so the player's hand could aim it. So I could technically end the BB gun thing here. You know, it aims, it fires, it just doesn't do what a minigun does. So next I need to make the minigun rotate, which is weirdly difficult. I tried adding forces to the barrel so it would rotate and spin, and then when you turned it, it would turn with the gun, but then it just started doing weird things. I didn't understand how it was working because it's a child of the main object, so you'd think that it would stay with it no matter what, but the physics disagreed. The way that I ended up just solving it was, instead of rotating it with physics, I tried to mimic physics by adding a slowly increasing number until it spun faster and faster. So I'm thinking that I probably learned enough in order to complete the project. So this transition did a couple weird things to my motivation. The transition from phase 1 to phase 2 messed up my motivation a little bit. I didn't properly set goals right as we switched into phase 2, so I kind of aimlessly wandered around, not really getting anything done for like a week or two. I think that part of me wanted to continue with the project I had been working on as opposed to starting a new one, but that's the point of a playground. You're not supposed to finish that project. That project is for testing. It's a playground. And then of course I had all the little pesky life stuff that likes to just pop up and ruin your time. I started out learning a plugin called Pro Builder. One thing that had been holding me back is that 3D modeling isn't my focus. Coding and general development is my focus. I spent way too much time looking on crappy websites for 3D models, only to then not find anything even crappy prototype models. Once I found Pro Builder, I was like, I can make crappy prototype 3D models but still be using the same interface that I'm used to. I was all on board. The first thing that I created with Pro Builder was a little tent to house some of the games. I recreated what I had been doing with the darts game, but in the new game, this time using an actual dartboard. How do you play darts anyway? Oh, jeez. What do you mean getting a bullseye isn't the most amount of points you can get at a time? So I went ahead and I created the basketball again, but this time I used Pro Builder. I made a torus and then I jankily modified that into a full-size basketball hoop. So I then rigged up the basketball hoop so that you had to throw a ball from the top to the bottom in order to score a point. So then I modified my Trello board. So for the gun game, there's two parts. There's the gun, and there's the target you're shooting at. I decided to start with the targets because I figured I could get them done easier. So I found like a 3D model of like a football goal or something like that, and then I put a little target in it, and then I added an animation of it falling over, and an animation of it slowly coming back up. I hooked up functions to both sides. After you hit the target, a random amount of time later, the target will come back up. So I found a 3D model of a rifle on the internet, and I decided to use it as our rifle for the game. I hooked it up just like the minigun, where you can aim it around a pivot. I created little silver bullet things that just fly really fast forward. This is where I encounter one of my biggest problems with Unity randomly. In 2D, you're able to have a collider or a trigger, and the trigger registers, at least for me, hits no matter about how fast I'm going, unless I'm going like the speed of light. With 3D, you can be going at a leisurely stroll, and somehow it misses the trigger, even though the trigger and it overlap for some amount of time. I could not get this to work with the trigger for some reason. I tried with setting the rigid bodies to dynamic. I made sure if they were going slow it hit, but it would not if it went even slightly faster. I then made it so that the rigid bodies were set to dynamic predictive, so it was like as sensitive as it could be. So when I was researching, I saw somebody who was talking about changing the time step for physics, and that didn't work either. Finally, I changed it to a collider, and no matter how fast I shot that bullet, it always registered every time. So I guess with 3D you have to use collision more than trigger. So if you know any other way around that where you can make the trigger operate kind of like in 2D, where in 2D I use it for like everything and it never misses and never has issues, then let me know. I'd love to hear it in the comments. So I realized pretty quickly that making a basketball game inside of a tent doesn't really work very well. So I used Pro Builder to go ahead and make a little boxed out area for the basketball, and then I also added like a ramp and a little area for the balls to get spawned from. I made basketballs spawn automatically from the hole in the basketball area. So let's see, 8's probably good enough. A lot of the rest of the process was just making the games be actual games, as opposed to just aimless tasks that didn't have any scores associated to them. I added a dart game object, a BB game object, and a basketball game object that got a call from the start button, and then they could also reset the start button once the game had ended. They each had their respective end state that would engage once a certain thing happened. The BB gun game would start a timer. The dart game just waited for all of the darts to stick into something, and the basketball game needed all the balls to be destroyed, which they would get secretly destroyed if you missed into the hole. The last thing that I needed to do for this phase was to create a UI, a simple UI that would update when the game was playing to show you the score that you were aiming for, and also any like timers or any other information like that. Okay, now I technically have 3 complete minigames. Phase 3. The game isn't even in a remotely complete state. A couple days back, I deeply considered just dropping the project. I thought, well, you know, I'm not a 3D modeler, it's not going to look great. I'm not putting my whole life or months into the project, so it's not going to feel or play super great. So I thought, well, you know, I got the VR part of it out of the way. Why don't I just, you know, move on to the next project? Like, this one's not worth my time anymore. And I thought about it for a couple days. I finally realized that this logic I was going down was flawed. This year isn't about watch me create 12 perfect games in 1 year. This year is about getting the mindset to complete projects. I always had so much of trouble with it. I'm not quitting this one just because I'm a little bored with it. I have time to be choosy in the future with which projects I complete. With this reinvigoration, I'm starting this next phase. There's a few specific flaws that I want to address. Number 1, the map is literally just a flat plane. Number 2, there's no lighting. 3, there's no incentive to beat any of the minigames or even play them. 4, there's no sounds apart from the default teleporting noise that comes stock with Steam VR. So I decided to start with the lighting. I had never done lighting before. There was not anything too crazy going on. I did find that when I had certain things open and I had auto bake enabled, my computer just crunched and could not survive. I originally wanted the game to be on, a relatively open area, like an open field, with a path running down the middle, and have 3 booths, and then you'd be blocked into that kind of section of the path by like carts and other tents and whatnot. But I realized quickly that my tents don't really look good enough to put a bunch of them around. I didn't know about how to create a good enough environment in that small a scale. I'm not really a designer. I'm just looking to create, the core parts of the games. I had a Ferris wheel. If anybody sees the previous footage or the Instagram post that I posted recently, I had a Ferris wheel in it. The Ferris wheel had really bad anti-aliasing issues, and it just looked terrible in the headset. I couldn't find a decent merry-go-round online for cheaper than $13, so I didn't feel like doing that. Okay, so what I envisioned finally, and that I thought was maybe in my reach, I thought about maybe like a little valley with like an opening, and then some hills and like mountains, and then a path that comes through those mountains down to where the player is actually at. So it could be like semi-realistic, like, okay, we're gonna go through the mountains to get to the little carnival or whatever. So I figured out how to use the terrain tool. I looked it up at work a little bit, and then I was tweaking it when I got home and trying to figure it all out. It actually was pretty intuitive once I got the hang of the basics. I also found out that there was grass textures and trees and stuff that were included in the terrain pack that I thought looked good enough. So I sprinkled them around and tried to make it look like they grew in areas that made sense for them to grow. I thought that the little valley felt very calm and peaceful looking, so I plopped my tents back over there, and then I got everything set up and with the player. So I found kind of like a jankish way to make it nighttime. I set the overall skybox, instead of making a nighttime skybox, I just set it to a flat color and made that color like a blue-black. So next, in order to address the issue of it not feeling like anything mattered in the game, I found a teddy bear texture online, and I imported it in and I scaled it to the right size, and then I made an animation for each of the stalls that would cause the teddy bear to come down, greet you, and then fly to a table, so that once you got enough points, it would do that animation and it would feel like, hey look, we won. Lastly, I added sounds. I added sounds to all the most important features. So I added sounds to everything that felt like it needed some feedback. I made the darts thunk. I made the basketballs make bouncing noises. I made the games make a start noise and a win noise. I made a little gunshot and a tink noise when you shoot a target. I had some really weird bugs that I wasn't expecting. One of them gave you infinite points for no reason on the dart game. It was like an overlapping trigger, and even though I shut it off, it just kept giving you points. Another one was so with this project, only one of my other friends has VR, and he wasn't available to test, so I just played it around on my own, tried to get as many bugs fixed, and then just called it good. If you find any bugs, I'm sorry. It's kind of a short little project. I don't know if I'll patch it, but I'd definitely like to know about them. I know there's at least one that I still have in there, sort of. I got it tweaked down so that it doesn't happen too often, but sometimes, So, in conclusion, I enjoyed creating this game, especially the beginning couple weeks where I was learning all this new VR and I had enough space to deal with it. Part of my life things going on is that I'm actually moving out. And so at the moment, we're trying to survive in one bedroom, 2 of us, and now we have a 4th rabbit, so we have 4 rabbits. Surviving in this little bit of space is terrible. I hate dealing with it. So I'm dealing with the smallest of small VR setups you can deal with. So testing was very hard and demotivating sometimes. Once I got past the VR specific stuff, I got very demotivated and like, all right, well, I did what I came here to do. I'm leaving. But that's when that motivation, like this year is about completing projects. I don't think I've been making the most fun games. I think my funnest game is probably actually the game jam, my first game jam, where I made the bullet hell game. I think that's probably the most entertaining one that I've made. One of the things that I've learned throughout this project is that a passion project doesn't mean it's something that you just have this fiery burn the whole project from start to finish and you're done and then everything's great. I'm realizing that passion has more to do with the longevity in like a slow burn kind of way. Like if I don't really care for it, like this game is not the kind of VR game I would play. Just like when I make the little 2D platformer, I don't really care for that specific kind of 2D platform. When I made that one zombie board game, I mean, I played the original that it was inspired based off of, but like that was when I was a lot younger, and it's still not even, it's not really my type of game. So I think that part of that, what I'm learning is just because a game's simple doesn't mean it's any easier to get through. I think that some of these games, if I try to focus on something that I actually do enjoy, that I'll have more fun when I create it, and I'll be able to continue on week after week without getting so burnt out right away. If you enjoyed this video, check me out on Instagram for updates on the current project that I'm working on. Sometimes you'll see sneak peek stuff like the Ferris wheel that didn't actually make it in the final game. I like to chat all things game dev over on my Discord, so if anybody wants to chat, I'll post a link in the description, and I'll be over there. And of course, you can subscribe here on YouTube. Every month or so, I'm trying to get a video out about each project that I make. This project hasn't discouraged me. I'm still going to keep working on every project throughout this year. I've completed 5 of the 12, so I'm kind of getting a little behind, but I figure if I make some solid game jams done, I'll count those. As long as they're not like halfway done, you know, game jams that I complete, I will count. I'm looking to improve my skills, but most importantly, I'm looking to get over and get through the quitting mentality. I don't want to quit unless I've calculated that that's the right decision. I don't want this feeling inside that I used to get so bad of just like, nope, not worth it, I'm not having it fun, this has gotten difficult, whatever, and then just quitting. I'm going to make sure that I stick with every single project. So, I'll see you in the next video.